Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry for the delay, a few technical problems. This meeting of the WSESU will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location where the public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice of meeting.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Designated notice and posted. If a member of the public or the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during the meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. Okay, made it through that one. I'm going to try something new tonight. Is there anything anyone feels needs to be removed from the consent agenda? Second call? Okay, I would entertain a motion to enter consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah.
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that went very quickly. Our next item on the agenda will be finance.
Very good, and our primary topic tonight is overview of the food service contract along with the transportation contract. So if you don't mind, Ian, I'll introduce Chris Farrell from Fresh Picks and we'll jump right into that.
Okay.
Okay, yes, so here we are with Chris Farrell with Fresh Picks, the food service management company representative, and we've invited him to provide a very brief overview of the food service operation and then open things up to any questions any of you may have. So I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Frank. Yep, my name is Chris Farrell. I am the Vice President of Fresh Picks Cafe. We have been your food service provider for about 27 years now. So thank you for giving us some time to come and talk about the program. It's been an exciting, interesting year at Fresh Picks Cafe. I'm not sure if you're all aware or not, but we were up until February owned by a company called Cafe Services out of Manchester, New Hampshire. In probably mid last year, the owners of Cafe Services, Bill Van Zant and Brian Stone, the two founders of the company, both decided they wanted to retire. The Van Zant companies don't work in the business. The Stone kids wanted nothing to do with schools. They like working with businesses and institutions. So Bill and Brian set out to find a new home for Fresh Picks Cafe. In February, we were acquired by Whitson's Culinary Group and became a part of the Whitson's family of companies. Whitson's is also a family-run business. It's run by a family by the name of Windham. They are based out of Long Island, New York. They're also a regional food service provider, their primary concentration is in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. And they were very interested in Fresh Picks, one, because we competed against them a lot in Massachusetts and they were impressed by what they saw. But also, two, they really wanted to enter the New Hampshire and Vermont markets, which we have a strong presence in. So after months of a process, Bill and Brian decided it was the right fit, and we became a part of the Whitson's family of companies. Really what it means for the programs going forward is Fresh Picks now has access to some really great advantages that are brought by a bigger company. Whitson's is the, I think, second or third largest provider of K-12 school nutrition programs in the country. They do more school lunch than almost anybody else. They are in, I know they're top 20, I think they're number 15 in terms of size, in terms of food service management companies. So they bring a lot of resources. Some of the ones that the students will start to see over the course, at this point in the year, it's probably gonna be more next year. But one of the programs that we're really excited about is that Whitson's is certified halal. So we're gonna be able to better serve the students in the community who follow a halal diet. They have a goal of 10% of all entrees being plant-based by the 24-25 school year. They've got a great program of vegan products and that kind of stuff that we'll really be able to take advantage of. And we really feel those two programs are gonna be really big in Brattleboro. We've always had a lot of call for that. The halal especially, we didn't have the capability of servicing those students. We could just do non-haram, I believe is the right term. Now we're actually gonna be able to bring people in to train our staff, bring products in to actually serve those students. Those are two real big ones. Another thing that we're gonna have access to is their pop-up concept, which is similar to stuff we've done in the past. We've done, Lunar New Year with an Asian themed menu and that kind of stuff. We did State Fair in the fall. They've got a whole program where they bring in their culinary people and transform the cafeteria. That one, we're doing our first one in Rutland next Tuesday. Excited to see that, and it'll be coming here soon as well. And then more on the technical side, which is what Frank and I were chatting about before the meeting started. Their financial reporting and control systems are so sophisticated compared to what Cafe Services had, just because they're such a larger business. On the side of operating your program, we've got greater tools than we have ever had before. Especially in a program like the one in Windham Southeast that's, extremely complicated. You've got every single USDA program you can think of in terms of after-school meals and fresh fruits and vegetables and summer program and everything. On top of your own stricter nutrition standards and all of that kind of stuff. It's a lot to manage. And these systems, as we get them up and running, are definitely gonna help. As Susan could tell you, we're still working out the bugs. Susan just helped a couple of days ago looking at some of the information online because now our nutrition system, we set the recipes up, it flows all the way through to the information the parents see. It's a very sophisticated, very complex system. And with any very sophisticated, very complex system, when you have unique sets of guidelines like we have here, it takes some time to work out the bugs. So Susan identified some products that we thought didn't meet the nutritional guidelines. When we looked into it, we were using the right products, the wrong products were displaying in the system. So we're still working through some bugs like that, but when it's all said and done, it's gonna provide a huge benefit. So that's kind of what's been going on with Fresh Picks Cafe. I'd really like to hear from you guys if you have questions or anything else.
Did I understand you correctly saying that the parents would have the availability of looking at menus and so forth?
They do now, yeah.
Mhm. That'd be via email or?
So they can go online. There's a website that's linked from the WSESU website that goes to online interactive menus where they can click into each food item, see a picture, they can rate the item right there, they have all the nutritional information, they can pull up the ingredient list, they can screen it for allergens.
I think that would be a great parental involvement in the larger school district.
Yeah, and it's there now.
I'm just gonna, excuse me, I'm just passing out the part of the bid form that we'll be discussing once we get through Chris's presentation. And I don't know if he'll refer to it or not, but I thought I'd make it available while we're starting.
That's okay. So the capability that Sean just referenced, this is different from the menus that we can see online on a per school basis.
It's all tied together.
It's all tied together.
Yeah, so when you click into that website and you pull up the school, it displays a menu.
Right.
And you actually, this is one tip that people, this is a little different than our old system. There's a button at the top that says printable menu, I believe, and it'll show every single item that we're serving. Because there's some, like condiments, that kind of stuff that's hidden in the quick view. But you can open it up and then you can click on any single item on it, see the description, see,
Okay,
rate
great.
that item, all of that stuff.
Great, okay.
Do you have any new ideas about wastage, cutting down wastage?
Yeah, so right now, we do fairly well controlling waste. One of the challenges that we've had that we've been working with the elementary schools on is milk. We do a breakfast in the classroom model, so we deliver breakfast right to the classroom for the students. It's a complicated model, but it's a great model. The breakfast participation in Windham Southeast schools is probably some of the highest in the state. We have tremendous breakfast participation. The problem with the model is that we have to send everything, including the milk. It has to be the full USDA specified meal. A lot of the kids aren't drinking the milk. They don't want the milk, so we bring it back to a share cooler. So kids can grab it in the morning or grab it at lunch. There's still a lot of milk, and we're working with the administration. Academy is one of the hardest ones because it's one of the bigger ones. But we're working with the administration to kind of do everything we can to keep that so we're not wasting a lot of milk. It's getting put in the share cooler. They're getting opportunities to take it at other times, all of that. That's really probably the biggest challenge we've had with waste, which is fairly well managed. Every once in a while, we'll hear from Academy, hey, we're getting a little too much on milk again, and we'll see what we can do to reduce it. But that's really been the biggest issue with waste.
Can the students put other items in the share coolers?
Yep, yeah. And it's nice because in Vermont, we can help you manage those share coolers. In the other states that we work in, the health department will not let us touch those. That's food code, no matter where you are, is once a food service provider has served food, they cannot take it back. Even if it's a packaged milk that's not open, we cannot take it back. Luckily in Vermont, they allow us to help you guys with that share table.
Vermont is usually ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
And if I remember correctly, the milk distribution is all FDA mandated, isn't it?
Yeah, the regulations for school meals are very complex, far more complex than they probably need to be, because we have a rule for everything. Everything, yeah, Susan knows. And so milk is part of that mandated it's one of the meal components. Because we send the breakfasts to the classroom, we have to send all of the meal components. At lunch, students can participate in what's called offer versus serve, so they can choose to take the milk or not.
Yeah, so years ago when we went to breakfast after the bell, our participation rates skyrocketed, like threefold.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yep.
30%.
And if you look at the, and actually it's probably on that sheet, right? Like you've got the breakfast and lunch meal counts.
Yeah.
They're almost equivalent.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, actually breakfast is a little higher.
220,000 breakfasts and lunches served annually, nearly, yeah.
Can you tell me what kind of training your employees receive to interact with our students and our staff?
Sure. Yeah, so Fresh Picks Cafe, when we were with Cafe Services, did monthly training packets, which was mostly, like paper training that was sent to the building leads or the managers, and they would ask me to go through them. And then we had other resources like our dietitians, Heather Shastany and Rachel Boland, our floating chef managers who would come out and do other training online, in person as well. Now, as part of the Whitson's family of companies, and I'm just learning about, I was supposed to have a training about it yesterday, but it got bumped to next week. Just learning about their system. But they, for their training that is part of the USDA requirements that we have to track the, formal training, all of that, they actually do it all online. And employees are able to do it from a computer, from a phone, or whatever. And they can do it anytime they want. And the system tracks them. So if they're like, hey, it's a snow day, I'm gonna get a bunch of my training done, they go on, they do their training, and they're actually paid for it because the system's tracking, which is a great improvement over what we had before. But it's really gonna still be that same combination of that formal training that has to be tracked for USDA compliance, and then a lot of on-site, in-person training between our dietitians, and now called operations managers, those type of people that come out and do that kind of thing. The other difference with Whitson's as well is they actually have regional HR professionals that work in the locations. When we were at Cafe Services, those people were based in Manchester and really would only come out if there's an issue. Whereas with Whitson's, our regional HR person, her name is Vanessa Nadeau, she actually came over from Cafe Services with Fresh Picks Cafe. She's actually out in our locations now every day, working with people, not just on any issues that arise, but also, training and other stuff as well.
Do they receive any diversity, equity, and inclusion training?
That I can't answer yet. I can tell you with Cafe Services, they did not. I'm not sure about what's.
Okay, because, we have minority students of many stripes that
Yep.
get interacted with, and it is a matter of some concern in this district.
Yeah, and I can follow up and let Frank know, and he can let you guys know. I wouldn't be surprised if Whitson's does have some of that. Part of the reason too, like why they became halal certified was in response to the populations they were serving. So I can find out for you. I wouldn't be surprised if Whitson's does, but I have to be honest off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Everybody does have to do civil rights training.
Yes.
That is definitely the sort of thing we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
that's required.
Yeah, it's a little different than diversity
Yeah,
and
it
inclusion
is.
training, but it is, every year they do civil rights training.
So just to piggyback off what Ann just asked, I presume the trainings that you're talking about are done in-house.
Mhm.
They are provided by the company.
Mhm.
Okay, and when you say that all the trainings are done online,
So the formal, so with the USDA, and I do wanna clarify one thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
The civil rights training is the state's training now, we all do the
Yes.
state's training, yeah. So the civil rights training is actually an online Vermont AOE training. The other trainings that I'm talking about, under USDA guidelines, all of our employees have to have, the part-timers, I think, are a minimum of 8 hours, or is it 4?
Is it 4? Depending on how many hours is
If they work,
part-time.
yeah. But, so all of our employees have to have anywhere from 4 to 12 hours of training per year, similar to the continuing ed that teachers are required to take. And that needs to be formal, like, you read this, take this course, whatever, do this little quiz, all documented, all of that, for our documentation for USDA compliance. We used to do that all paper with Cafe Services, now that's done online, but that's separate from people coming out like our HR person, our operations managers, those type of people doing on-site trainings on culinary things, HR, whatever they're training on now, because I'm not familiar with that program yet. service, all of that kind of stuff. That's all done in person.
So when you mention service training, does that mean point of contact with another human being, or does it mean service within the kitchen?
So it means customer service in terms of the interaction between the employees and the students.
Yes. But does that training only have to do with the providing of food? Or is it also about direct interaction with young adults?
I know the trainings in the stuff that we did with cafe services was pretty much primarily focused on that food service role.
Right.
I don't know if Whitson's has anything else as well. I don't know, are there any of those type of trainings open to Windham Southeast employees? Because one of the things we do encourage is that the food service employees participate in those type of trainings as well.
Right.
So,
And if that were to be the case, I think the trainings would be very different. I don't think they would be relegated to being online with a quick quiz, which is one kind of training that is superficial, as against
Right.
face-to-face questions, which becomes more in-depth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is a possibility. Okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Anybody else?
Could you explain the line about after-school snacks? That was
On-
NSLP.
on the paper here? Sure.
NSLP's
Yep.
National School
Yep.
Lunch Program.
So the USDA offers 2 after-school meals programs. One is the after-school snacks program, and the other one is the very unwieldy Child and Adult Care Food Service Program at-risk after-school meals. That program is much better than the after-school snacks program.
Much more robust.
Yeah, much more robust. The nutritional value of it is better. And it is just overall better for the finances of your program. So in this district, we do a lot of the CACFP supper, and we don't have any snack programs in place for after school.
What is that called again?
You can call it CACFP supper. That's the
Child
easier
and
way to go.
Adult Care Food Program. And it has just as many rules and regulations, if not more.
Oh, they all do. I mean, there's regulations about access to potable water, there's regulations about the signage we have posted. One of the funniest ones I had from one of the USDA reviews back when I was the compliance officer. We had a reviewer come out, look at the program, and then she left and contacted us and said, hey, I forgot to look at your And Justice for All poster. I saw it was hanging, but I'm not sure it was the right size because it has to be a specific size. So she made us send her a picture of us holding a ruler next to the poster so she could clear that part of the review. Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I can make a motion.
There's nothing further?
I move that the WSESU move to approve the food service management contract with Fresh Pets for FY 2025. Year 2 of 5-year mutual agreement to manage child nutrition programs at Academy, Green Street, Oak Grove, BUHS, Dummerston, Vernon, and Guilford. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Welcome aboard for another year.
Thank you very much. We are truly honored to be here another year, and as long as we've been here, this has been one of Believe it or not, you're not Fresh Picks Cafe's longest relationship, but it's definitely one of them. And we truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, in my continuing mission to keep it moving, transportation contract?
Yes, so you may recall, last year we talked about extending the, current contract that we have. It's referred to as, Travel Cuz. They make the Cosmuscus name a little easier. You may recall Travel Cuz was acquired by Beacon Mobility. And we're in the same position and recommendation this year where we're looking to extend the current contract another year. One of the contingencies that we had pending, thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Susan.
night, everybody.
One of the contingencies we had pending was the EPA Clean Bus grant. Initially, the EPA said they would announce the results of our application in April. They've extended that to sometime in May. They actually haven't published a date in May. But the program requires, if we are awarded the grant, to be fully implemented by FY26. So I'm sure it will come out fairly soon because they know the lead time to get the infrastructure for charging systems through the utility built out, and then acquisition of the buses and so on takes some time. So that's the primary reason for me wanting to continue to recommend a extension as opposed to another 5-year full bid. It's only an option if the current vendor comes within the state statistic that is a threshold which must be not exceeded. It's an inflation rate for the extension. Beacon Mobility has committed to another 3% contract pricing extension, which is terrific in terms of the current economic climate. I think folks know generally a lot of segments in the economy are inflation, still inflating well above 3%. So I'm very pleased with that. I know Mark and I are very much in touch with our principals, and we have a good sense of whether or not we're hitting the targets in terms of service, quality of service, responsiveness to issues that come up, and they've done very well. We did have some challenges, like everyone in that industry, around the ability to recruit replacement drivers when folks retired and or moved on, but they have not let us down. They have drawn on a larger organization that Cosmuscus could have drawn on, and kept us in all routes operational and services as according to our specifications. So the recommendation is to approve the extension of the transportation contract with Cosmuscus for fiscal year 25.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Second?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We second, then we have a conversation. Is that your second?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Discussion.
Yeah, I was wondering, was there a specific dollar amount that should have been in that motion?
It's 3% on the current contract, and the contract is broken out into two primary components. I will bring that up, and the to and from school for regular education. It's broken down by a variety of routes. So it's for example, and Paul, if you would like, I'll share my screen. I'll just put it on the screen for you.
Coming up.
Are we all set? I can share.
There you go.
All right, here we go. I gotta push some more buttons here. Full screen. Here it is. Looks like that one. So it's not a single number, Sean, to answer your question. It's by the line of business. So here's the contract that it represents what you approved last year and then the prior year legacy of the 5-year bid. So for fiscal year 2025, the primary service is this $437 cost per day, and that's per bus. Okay, so that's to and from school regular ed. That estimate would be $1,309,000 versus the $1,270,000. So each one of these lines of businesses is up the 3%, and I've double checked. So we have, you see a late bus, and we have some field trips, cost per mile, cost per hour, and then there's the athletic business. And because they're variable, that's why we don't roll it up into a single number. Not sure how many games are scheduled this far in advance. So that's regular ed, and then on special education, here's the data for the special ed. It's similar where it's by a particular route, and for our wheelchair retrofitted buses, we have rates, and then we have rates for our summer program. So that's the format.
So in some respects, it almost could be considered cost plus because of the variability.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
And one of the questions, when you go to Essex, play a basketball game, is that under this same contract? And is it with a school bus or with a full size?
This is all school bus related services. And the to and from school is an exclusive contract, meaning we're not calling somebody else up and saying, will you do the Putney route? It's with, they buy the buses to meet our route specifications. But the athletic is not exclusive. So if a coach wants to fundraise and we want to do something out of, other than a regular yellow school bus, then, that can be negotiated and that could be contracted with somebody else. But yeah.
Thank you.
So going to Ann's question regarding Fresh Picks, to what extent is training provided to the drivers?
Mark, do you have a sense of their program?
I don't have a sense as Chris spoke to, but there are training requirements.
Yeah.
They have not participated with us in trainings, but that's something we could certainly look into.
Yeah. Our specifications require them to defer to the principal in terms of any kind of a discipline and or student interaction. So they're very much directed to provide a transportation service and not be a supervisor of students or a disciplinarian. We do have monitors as part of this contract for particularly our more crowded or fully subscribed routes.
So we recently looked at a policy having to do with transportation and the fact that if there is a problem on a bus and a student is asked not to be on that bus, that it would immediately involve caregivers and the student at the school site.
Mm-hmm.
That it just would not be a decision made by a driver. Something came up in one of today's meetings having to do with training, which is something different than addressing an issue after the fact.
Mhm.
And it's training that would be provided by the district, sensitivity training. And we would want that in place, I think, before there was an incident, because someone said something inappropriate
Mhm.
to a child.
Sure.
So I think that's my question. What kind of, what possibility exists for drivers, and as you say, I forgot about bus monitors,
Mhm.
to be actively involved in district training?
Yeah, we can inquire with Beacon Mobility, and again, similar to what you heard from Chris Farrow
Yeah.
with the acquisition of Cosmoscus, they do have much more, many more resources to bring to the organization. They I believe, I referred to them employing 15,000 folks across the country in their national footprint, of services. So they have a lot of resources. But I will ask that question, and we can share that.
I'm sure we could have some sort of stipulation
Oh yes.
for moving forward to
Yes.
participate in professional development.
Mm-hmm.
That works for me.
That works for me too. Depending upon how it's worded.
So we're still in motion, I think. Are we in a motion?
We are in a motion, yes, we are.
Are there any more questions? Do you want to withdraw the motion and add the stipulation? Or do you just want to?
I would like a friendly amendment to the motion to add a stipulation that, training, that Beacon, agrees to trainings as per the district's needs.
Go ahead. I'm not sure I like it,
Okay.
because I feel like we're putting something very amorphous on the table and Beacon isn't gonna know. I wish we could have a conversation with, I wish we could move this along, have a conversation with them, and then maybe see where they're at. Because I don't wanna have a stipulation that the only way they're gonna get this contract is if they do something and they go and tell it to their people, and their people say no, or it's not in their contracts. It seems like we're getting into where we shouldn't. But I'm not opposed to the idea of it.
So I'm looking at my notes about the food service, saying, my note says that they are open to participating in WSESD training.
Mhm.
So I guess that's what my friendly amendment is about. So meanwhile, we had a representative from Fresh Picks here. We had a vice president who could actually speak to that. And I think we can hold him accountable to that based upon his position.
Can I do a friendly amendment on your friendly
Oh
amendment?
golly, yes, I'm
With
looking forward to it.
stipulation that our administration reaches out to Beacon to discuss possible professional development, joint professional development, something like that. But if they for some reason say no, we still have a bus provider, because I'd rather have the buses.
No, I appreciate that we have to have the buses.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. But I don't want to minimize issues that we have been talking about. And it's another set of adults interacting with kids
And families.
and families. And I am specifically thinking about a policy in which we are looking at gender freedom. And so, and language is always very important. So I don't want to escalate one marginalized group over another. Can I hear your friendly amendment to the friendly amendment?
So right now I have, the board moves a 1-year extension on the transportation contract at a 3% increase for FY '25, with the stipulation that our administration reaches out to Beacon, whatever they're called, to discuss possible joint professional development opportunities.
Can you take out possible?
Okay.
And that, how does that?
Joint, to
Read before that.
discuss
That.
joint professional development opportunities,
Can you read a little before that?
with the stipulation that our administration reaches out to Beacon to discuss joint professional development opportunities.
I'm in favor of this friendly amendment to some degree, but I'm just wondering, is the contractual agreement between Beacon Mobility, is that really the place to do it? Or could we do it another way, another motion, and a totally another motion? Because
Separate.
if they, they're looking for a contract, and if we say, okay, here's a contract with stipulations, it doesn't seem like a very friendly way to do business. And we could do another motion that would say, in the transportation that we've contracted for the SU, we want to make sure that that there is sensitivity for everything involved with young people, something like that. So I would prefer to go back to the original motion and then maybe make another motion so that it's not commingled.
I like that the stipulation is on us though. It's on our administration to reach out.
But we could do that in the second motion, that has nothing to do with the contract.
I mean,
I
guess it's there. What I'm thinking is they will give it some thought when the contract comes around next year. Whether they're able to do it, or not. Sure.
I also think that by establishing a stipulation in a motion at this point, I don't see it as hostile. I see it as indicating the will of the district, the desire of the district, coupled with transportation. We are going with this transportation service. Here's what also needs to take place as part of the responsibility of the transportation service.
Can I interject?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Sean's point's an important one. Deborah has not undermined it in any way, and Carrie really ties your language ties the law, the statute, to the intent. And in that, because you used the word discuss, you didn't direct, you didn't require. My point is that, as Sean was pointing out, the statute that allows us to do this is extending an existing contract. So if you put something into the existing contract, you're not following the law, and you are putting the vendor in a funny position. But I think we can make it all work just fine, the way Carrie has written it.
But with two motions.
You could do two motions,
Okay.
but the way you
Because
written
we
it,
didn't,
there was really
it's not a demand.
there was no deliverable contingency in the way you wrote that motion.
Okay, well, because the
The contingency is simply Mark
Mark,
and I reach out.
you guys have to do
And
something.
obviously, we will do that, and we're very confident that they will respond in a productive, favorable way. But in no way should that change their reaction to the original contract, because you didn't say you'll schedule 20 hours and training, but and so on. If you did that, we're not following the state law. So I think the way Carrie's navigated that, it addresses Sean's concern and Deborah's suggestion as well, and puts us in a good place.
So Carrie, can
One more time?
yes, please, we need to hear it one more time, yes.
On a motion by Deborah Stanford, I've written this as if it's about to happen. On a motion by Deborah Stanford, seconded by Sean Murphy, the board approved a 1-year extension on the transportation contract at a 3% rate increase for FY '25, with the stipulation that our administration reaches out to Beacon to discuss joint professional development opportunities.
That work for everybody?
Makes sense.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
All right.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, done.
Very good,
Thank
thank you. And that's, I think, all I had on the agenda this evening.
Yes, finance and the administrative report have sort of blurred together, but it was in the order it was expected anyway, so. So, Mark.
Okay, pretty straightforward approach to supervision evaluation cycle that our district has in place. Essentially a 3-year cycle, starting year 1 with observation. So that's classroom observations, including pre-conference, the observation, and post-conference, 3 times a year. And then in years 2 and 3, you turn to the following page, is supervision, where essentially the certified staff members create goals for the year, document them on this form by the middle of October, meet with the principal to review it, and then at the end of the year, after routine check-ins throughout the year, there's the final statement for the end of the year and documentation for how the staff member has reached their goals. And again, that's a face-to-face meeting with a written report. You can see the bottom indicates what the next year will look like for that staff member. And then the following page on the document, I just referenced our teaching performance standards as a framework for evaluation. So I've presented this the 3rd year in a row, so you're probably familiar with the document itself. But that's the formal approach tied to the master agreement, the CBA.
Question.
Is this posted on the website for the public?
It is not, but after tonight's presentation, I will put it on reports to the board.
Good.
Yeah.
I have one question. It's kind of a newbie question
Sure.
for somebody that just joined the SU. I was wondering, I wrote down how many staff fall under this SU, and is there a difference between the SD and the SU in terms of evaluation cycle and so forth?
Same
This
cycle
says
for
for
SU and SD staff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
it's
it's
the
the same deal, but
Yep.
it's done at the SU level, not at the SD level?
It's done at both levels.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. thank
All certified teachers tied to the master agreement.
you.
Yeah.
So
That's about 330 positions.
that's good.
Across both 330,
Mhm.
SD and SU.
And this is all certified positions, which means nurses, not just teachers, but it's everybody that's subject to that contract.
On the second page,
Mhm.
could you explain how, number one, the supervision option, peer assistance and so on, how that plays out like in the high school and the middle school?
It depends on the teacher and what their preference is for that school year. Peer assistance is, again, another year of observation.
Observation by a peer.
By a peer or an administrator.
And
And the goals could be a collection of all of those items above.
so then clinical supervision would be addressing
Specifically with the supervisor. Yeah.
who handles that? Principal or content expert or?
It would be the supervisor of the employee. So it could be like Whitney could do that, it could be a principal, it could be a director. Typically on year supervision, we see goals around items 2 and 3.
Oh,
Action, research, or professional development activities. As you know, we do have a peer observation program in place that we have adopted as well. So that would tie to option number 1. Number 4 is not usually taken, since they've done it the year before.
just that as an aside, I was working at a community college in California, and I got a state grant to do videotaping of teachers teaching themselves.
Yeah.
It was mind-bending for teachers to actually see themselves teaching. The more videotaping that we can do, the better.
Yeah, some teachers do that, and some are reluctant, but, yep.
If I could just, there are 2 bullet points in here that really seem to be honing the whole thing in. Maintains and regains student attention to task. Maintains a positive learning environment. That, when I read that, I thought, oh, that's good.
Yep. And these standards have been in place for about 10 years. And we'll review them again this summer.
And just one more question.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the year, do the principals offer a summative report, not naming names, but how their staff is doing? Like 80% of them just flew through the evaluation really well, and there's about 20% who needed some intervention. Do they give that kind of report?
I would say informally. Formally, that report is not in place as part of this cycle.
Informally to you?
Yeah, I like the idea. I might steal that one.
Oh my God, I better leave now while I'm
I think that's a great idea.
Sticker for you. I feel like you should get a sticker.
Oh my God, where am I?
So next year, maybe that's part of the packet.
And the individual conversations with teachers are just so meaningful. Like it's always nice to just pop into classrooms and see somebody for, a few minutes and kind of, but this is just such a, it's like where you really get into the meat of teaching. And I just really enjoyed this process and having the fall time, like over the scope of the year, having all those pre-conferences where people have their ideas and what they're gonna work on this year and what they're excited about. And, it often is like teachers will choose areas that they're struggling with or a group that they're struggling with when they're looking at their data. They're just not moving at the rate that we want. And so I'm just always so impressed by the teachers that we work with. And I feel super fortunate that all the special educators, we share supervision responsibilities with principals. And so I will often do an evaluation of an IEP meeting and a lesson, and then principals will do an observation of a lesson. So it's nice for them to receive feedback from different people as well, and to talk about what different evaluations look like, because that's a whole other thing, right? Is giving feedback that's actually helpful for people. And so that's been a great, practice that we've done some at our monthly leadership team meetings as well. It's just looking at evaluations that each other have written and just thinking about what's most helpful for teachers to receive to really change their practice and address the goals that they have for themselves.
And Mark, I think this board would be interested to hear a similar report about administrative positions, specifically principals,
Sure.
in the future.
Sure. Can do that. Next month?
That sounds great to me.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that 330, does that include the coaches? The
No,
tech coaches?
well, it's the folks that are subject to that employment agreement. So generally it doesn't, there's There is a,
Not the athletic coaches.
oh, yes.
instructional.
Sure,
Instructional.
yeah, instructional, yeah.
Which would be included.
Yeah, yeah, anybody that has an endorsement from the Agency of Education.
And is part of the agreement.
Yes. it's-
You got the endorsement.
Okay, was something important just said?
No.
Okay, no, I didn't hear it, so I just want to make sure I wasn't missing out on something.
Good on you for asking.
Thank you very much.
So moving on.
Thank you. We do have a new hire, is that in the agenda?
It's not, I just got that from Mo while I was in a meeting with you earlier.
Got it.
So, but we did want to hear about Title I, which is on the agenda.
Do you mind speaking to that? Paul?
Sure, can do. So if I understand the request, it's sort of how does Title I work in Windham Southeast Supervisory Union? Is that kind of where we're at? Is that what the quick question is?
That and I think some specific allocations by school.
Sure. So I can provide sort of notes to this for the board after the fact. What's important to understand is the amount that's of Title I funding, which last year this year was about $1.4 million. That amount is determined by census data. And the census, the 10-year census, with all of its updates, that information gets used for money to flow from the federal government through the Agency of Education and is allocated to schools based on census data. The purpose of Title I funds is to provide compensatory education for schools that have a high percentage of poverty. So once the LEA, that is the SU, has that allocation, then how that $1.3 million, $1.4 million gets allocated works within the SU. And our approach has been there is necessarily some that has to come off the top for administrative and SU level work. And then everything else, the lion's share, over $1 million, gets allocated to schools that are active as Title I schools, and not all of the schools in Windham Southeast are active as Title I schools. One of the requirements is there for there to be 35% poverty at the school. And some of the schools, Guilford is an example, sort of have slipped in and out of that over time. For this year, Guilford, because in part probably because we went to community eligibility and therefore the push to get free and reduced lunch applications out to parents and back so that those students could receive free and reduced lunch. Those students were receiving free lunch anyway. So there wasn't the pressure for the families to put in the application. So our poverty numbers within the district actually went down. Not the census numbers, but our calculation of poverty, which forever has been free and reduced lunch. Except now that we're on community eligibility, we've got some new ways of identifying poverty, specifically Medicaid. And there's a new mechanism that's grown up that the state tells us all of the families that are on Medicaid, that are on SNAP, RUFA, all of those state level programs. And those students are directly certified as being eligible for free and reduced lunch. And then because those numbers are high enough, everybody gets free and reduced lunch as part of the community eligibility program, right? So our poverty numbers have changed, right? The calculation of poverty has changed. It's based on that Medicaid, particularly the identification for Medicaid, all the poverty levels have gone up. And you'll see that in the difference between older reports on student poverty in Windham Southeast and more current. But the gist is that we identify schools based on kind of a minimum, but also in terms of grade span. So we treat all of the elementaries, K6, K8 as a group. We treat the middle school as a separate grade band and the high school as a separate grade band. We allocate, for this year, we are allocating Title I funds to Academy, Oak Grove, Green Street, not Dummerston, not Guilford this year, Putney, and BAMS, not the high school, not Vernon.
Oh, I thought we were a Title I.
For next
For
year,
next year, okay.
Vernon has now, the poverty level in Vernon has increased to the point where we are obliged to provide the funding because they're within that elementary pool and their poverty numbers are up high enough. Okay?
All right, I'm sorry. This year, Academy, Oak Grove, Green Street, and Putney.
And bands.
Green,
And BAMS.
Putney BAMS, yeah.
BAMS, okay. And then next year,
Next
all
year.
of that.
Add
plus-
back Guilford and add Vernon.
Okay.
There's an important point here. The pot of money stays the same. So we're allocating those funds over more schools. So the individual allocation to a school would be less necessarily. And we've anticipated that in the budget. We saw the Medicaid numbers going up. We also have additional overhead costs. Specifically, we've this year hired a full-time homeless liaison because the homeless numbers have skyrocketed. And we need somebody in place we actually had somebody in place before who was doing an awful lot of work pro bono. Carol has finally, she's retired, and we actually needed to hire somebody to do that. So there's more overhead. We use that overhead for indirect costs, which is just funding the infrastructure of the business office, administrative costs for administering the grant, part of my salary, for part of the salary of the instructional coaches, the district level coaches, and then a little bit of money off the top that actually goes to the Title I schools for parent and family engagement. But that's in a couple of $1,000 for a school, $4,000. And one other cost, and that is off the top, and that is any independent school in our district catchment area that wants to pursue Title I support can also get Title I support from us, from the SU, based on the number of free and reduced eligible students enrolled in their schools from towns that we serve. Sorry, that was a mouthful of information. So in other words, and the specific example is St. Michael Catholic School. They are the one school in our area who have enough of a free and reduced population and who want to jump through the hoops to get, specifically you've got to rank all the kids and target a certain set of kids that get services, Title I kids that get services over the course of the year. So it's a bit of an involved process, but we do hire an academic support teacher part-time, very part-time, for St. Michael's Catholic School to provide those services. Okay, so that's all money off the top. Everything else gets divvied out to those Title I schools on a sort of a per free and reduced pupil basis. Right, we've done that, sort of ranked that, done it that way for the last few years anyway. That's been a new option that we've had in the software. So essentially, we say, here's the $1.4 million. We're going to take off this amount, about $300,000, for the various overhead pieces. The rest, over $1 million, between $1 million and $1.1 million, we're going to allocate to the participating Title I schools on a per free and reduced lunch pupil basis. So it'll vary by school. Some of the smaller schools, 50,000, 60,000. Academy's probably up over 200,000. Okay, and I can give you those specific numbers if you want. Again, it'll change next year, and it changes based on the allocation. We have to budget based on what we think the federal government is going to provide for Title I funding, and we don't even know our allocations for next year yet.
Those resources go into staffing.
Right. Oh yeah, and that is the most important point. All of what goes to the individual schools is for academic support teachers. That's the only thing that we spend it on.
And these assumptions are in the budgets that you approved in December. So for fiscal year 25, the budgets that we presented and reviewed had $776,000 allocated to the SD, for Title I, as Paul just described, and 55,000 to Vernon. And the balance was for the SU-based programs.
And the million figure that I gave you is for this year, so it's going, we budgeted, it's going down next year because of those additional costs that we have at the upper level. And we've been told that our overall allocation is going to be lower.
Couple of questions. How you determine the poverty level? Is that the same formula that a VTCAP uses to distinguish students in poverty versus non-poverty?
So let's run that back a little bit. So if I were to report on performance of low-income students versus not low-income students on the 23 or this year's when we get around to getting those data, VTCAP, those designations are based on information that we send from the district to the state as part of the longitudinal data system. The collections are the DCO6 in the fall and the DCO4 in the spring.
So it's basically the same?
Should be identical, because I'm pulling the data from Power School. We're pulling Bob Wickberg is pulling the data from Power School to send upstate.
Okay, now the second question. So Title I has to be targeted towards those students in need.
No, and this is the important thing.
Ah.
The way Title I is set up is there is a firewall, so to speak, between who generates the funds and who benefits from the funds. In the original model for Title I, the idea was you're a school with high poverty, you're going to get this chunk of Title I money. And then you're going to look at all of your students, regardless of their free and reduced status, and rank them based on need. Identify a list of kids that are going to receive Title I services, and your Title I teacher is only going to teach that list of kids for all year. And that model is really static and really not very flexible.
Right.
And instead, what all of our schools do is we participate in what's called a school-wide process, and we'll get Vernon identified for school-wide as well, that allows us to treat all of the kids as in a given school as Title I kids. So all of that academic support, kids come in and go out of academic support as the need arises, not because they were identified once in the year and they're in it for the whole year. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes good sense. And third question, how do you define academic support? Is it tutors? Is it
In
academic
our schools, there are teachers that are called academic support teachers. There's a job description for those teachers, and those teachers work on teams. It's in the larger schools, it's a grade level team. In the smaller schools, it's multiple grade level teams, and are part of the master schedule so that there are intervention blocks in place, and those teachers work with small groups of students providing or work in the classroom supporting an initial core instruction differentiated support. It works differently in different schools. That's the joy of a school-wide program. But those teachers are specifically identified as academic support teachers. They're not assigned a classroom and a class. They are more mobile. They are working with smaller groups as the need arises for the students.
And they're not the same people who deal with Tier 3 MTSS?
Well, yes and no. I mean, Tier 3, at least as I understand, Tier 3 is not equivalent, not exactly the same as special education, right? Tier 3 is more intense, smaller group, more time, not special education. So it may be that there are non-special education students that need more intense, smaller group, more time, and we can provide that with the academic support teachers.
Yeah, this has been illuminating.
Sorry?
This has been illuminating.
Okay.
The other thing to add to that, and I apologize for being late, we had a camp planning meeting. With the rule changes for special education as well, it's really a model of providing wraparound support by the most highly qualified teacher, and there's a lot of flexibility that's available for students. So if Paul's most qualified in providing math intervention, but I'm most qualified in providing reading intervention, and I'm an AST and he's a special educator, we might flip-flop kids for those different subjects based on the expertise of the teacher, as long as that's in consult with the case manager who's overseeing the IEP. Correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy.
You're doing great.
So I think aligned with that, it's really provided a lot of flexibility within our MLSS system, thinking of those blankets, of putting the blankets on or taking the blankets off, and what's the right kind of blanket for this situation. There may be a time where there's a group and the highly specialized need is some enrichment for kids, and the team might look at that, and maybe the classroom teacher's pulling off to do that while the academic support teacher is supporting a core group of children. So it's really highly differentiated based on assessment data and screening data and progress monitoring and things that we're seeing day to day in the class. And then this responsive ability by our teams that meet weekly to put student needs first.
Oh, okay. Sorry, just one more question. So, if it's entirely for academic support, except I think it's about 20% for administrative overhead, the rest of it is for academic support, does that, then Title I funds are not used for outside consultants to come in to do PD?
I can't think of an instance where we've used Title I money to bring in an outside expert.
Okay.
I can't, in,
Those are other
years and
things.
years and years.
Yeah.
There's the family engagement funds.
Okay, sorry, I'll take it back. I'll take it back. If we bring in like a speaker
Yeah.
as part of a family engagement evening,
Yes.
like that sort of thing, that's the extent of it. It caught me.
And there are very specific rules and guidelines of what Title I funds can be used and cannot be used for that really help. And the Agency of Education, because Paul is such a great mentor and going through it right now, provides extensive training and documentation and resources as well in terms of how those federal funds can be allocated and used.
Great.
So you mentioned that an independent school in the district can apply for Title I funding. And that amount of money comes out of the pool that our district gets at 1.4 million. So it's not as if it's extra money for the independent
Correct.
school.
Correct. But, I mean, the money is generated based on the poverty of the community that includes, presumably includes students who are enrolled in independent schools.
There's still
So
our kids.
why don't other independent schools in our area apply?
Generally speaking, it varies by school. Some schools just, it's like you say the words federal government and they're like, not me,
Don't want any part of that.
not interested, too many strings.
Right.
Others, they literally don't have enough students in poverty or just don't collect the data to indicate that. And just aren't interested. They're more interested in the other. And by the way, we also provide Title II and Title IV money for those independent schools. And more independent schools participate in that piece of it.
And when you say we, it's because Windham Southeast District is that entity.
Called the LEA, Local Education Agency.
And out of LEA comes funding to provide support personnel for the independent school.
Yeah, one of the rules is, and the feds are really clear about this, we can't just cut a check to an independent school. We can't even, they can't even front the money for, say, Title II money for some of their folks to go to a conference on Title II dollars. They can't even front the money and us cut the check to the independent school. We can reimburse individuals who happen to teach at that independent school, or we can purchase the thing ourselves. And for a salaried employee that would be doing, even if it's part-time, doing academic support work at St. Mike's, we hire that person.
Okay, what does LEA stand for again?
Local Education Agency. It's the sort of, Windham Southeast is a recipient of those funds as the local education agency.
Got it. Thank you.
So the towns that you're speaking of are the towns that are in the SU? is that
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, and Vernon for a long time was not, was certainly part of Title IIA and Title IV money, but was not a Title I school because the poverty level was below the threshold, and it's now well above the threshold.
I just wanted to clarify one thing and check my understanding, Paul, related to your question, Tim, in terms of if the poverty rates are the same, for example, for VTCAP, disaggregated reporting versus title reporting. And in general, yes, and those numbers are provided by the state. And my understanding is there's a little bit of lag time as the system has changed. So for example, the way that the VTCAP was loaded with student demographic data might have been based on last fall's census data that was locally provided for kids who took the test this spring. And then we just got potentially slightly different allocations based on the Medicaid data that was provided to the state. But behind the scenes, the state of Vermont does those calculations. So when we go to allocate the title funds, they just tell us, like, here's the total amount of students enrolled in the school, and here's the amount of students per our databases that speak to each other that are qualifying for free and reduced, and therefore the percentage of the school is 62% or 34% or whatever comes out at.
So the understanding under Title I is that those students who qualify below a certain line, poverty line, receive additional support.
No.
Right, that's what I thought. Because the money comes based upon those numbers, but then that money is used.
In our district is used for all students in
That's
the
right.
participating school.
Got it. I wanted to hear that back again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That it wasn't always the case. When I was teaching at Guilford back in the day, there was a Title I teacher and there were Title I students, and it was kind of like
That's
those
bad.
are the Title I.
Yeah. A divided
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
Right. Right. As against universal lunch, universal breakfast. Right.
So, could I ask another
And
question?
can I just do one
Oh, I'm
follow-up on
sorry,
that?
I'm
No,
sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I thought I was too, but my mind is rattling. So the assumption is, and I'm not doubting the assumption, I'm just throwing this out, that what you do within a school community benefits everyone in the community, in the school community, in terms of Title I money.
That's the school-wide model. Yep.
That's the school-wide model, okay. Now I'm finished.
So I was just wondering, just to sort of gather it all from my brain, the local education agency, how many exist in Windham County?
All the Windham SUs, Windham Northeast, Windham Southeast, Windham Southwest, Windham Central,
West River?
is that one?
Central.
So the federal government has a pot of money and they distribute it to the local education agency.
Through the state education agency. Our communication is all with the folks at AOE.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you for being prepared to answer those questions.
You bet.
for us tonight.
You bet.
Really appreciate
Potatoes.
that. And I believe the last thing we have in the administrative report is a hire.
Yes, I am very excited to recommend Andrew Spino for the position of special education teacher next year at Oak Grove School. This is another situation of someone who's always been interested in special education, has extensive experience as a classroom teacher, this year as an academic support teacher, and now with our new case management model is excited to move into special education, not having to lift the heavy weight of the paperwork burden. So we're very fortunate to have Andrew, and has lots of experience in the grade levels that he'll be working with and with our core programming as well as intervention programming along with our assessment systems. So exciting.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
I think we should advertise that case management thing, like around Windham County, and
It's a great
not saying
model.
poach people, but
I know,
come on.
I know, it's a tough balance, but yeah, it is very exciting to have some really excellent people coming into special education.
Nice.
And Whitney has really led that drive, so kudos to Whitney for doing that.
Great, Whitney, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, moving on to new business. In policy, presenting for first reading, E6, emergency closings, E7, safety and security of school facilities, E8, tobacco, prohibition, I believe, F12, transportation, G14, dissection, G15, Title I. Those are presented for a first reading, having already been adopted by the SD. And presented, moving on to old business, presented for a second reading, D7, volunteers and work study, F36, student freedom of expression in school media, and F32, student distribution of literature for adoption. Again, having already been adopted by the SD. We don't seem to have any public to comment on non-agenda items. Kim Price was here for a while, but I guess she had to go. So, is there any other business to come before this board, or that we would like to come before this board at a future meeting?
Oh, that was big.
Which, you know,
At
this
a
is.
future meeting.
No, I just actually hold this open
Yes,
every time,
Yes.
just for this purpose. If, you know, if you think of something tomorrow, you can still email me, but,
So a couple of takeaways from earlier, Frank and I will follow up with the bus company, and I'll provide an overview of the 360 evaluation process for administrators.
As well, could you follow up with Fresh Picks? Regarding,
Training.
They're gonna get back to us, but yeah, we'll share, because Chris got that message.
so true.
hey. If there is nothing further.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
there being no further business before this board, I move we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Yes, you do.
Thank you, Deborah. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstention? And we are adjourned at 6:31.
I like 5 o'clock.